Hello, Charlotte here, welcome back to Pretty Scary. Now today I'm using a new angle and I'm using my ring light, which is why I've got the new angle, because it was the only way I could set up my ring light, because I've been having some lighting issues because the weather is so poor here in England. So fingers crossed it will sort it out. You'll see in some of my later videos that I was having no end of issues because I filmed these out of sequence. So yeah, anyway, today is the first of my twisted 12 days of Christmas. And obviously it's Partridge in a Pear tree. As you saw at the start of the video, a very twisted version of Partridge in a Pear tree. So without much further ado, stay tuned and watch how I did it. Oh, and subscribe. Hit the subscribe button. So we're going to start this transformation by creating the beak. I am just cutting out a beak shape out of black card and making sure that fits on my nose by just making any alterations and just cutting those out. The lid always sticks, always. Just blocking up my brows with some Prosaide, putting some glue over, combing them up, and then putting some powder over the top, and then putting some Prosaide on the paper nose, putting that on my actual nose so that I know where the glue will go, and then waiting for the glue to go clear so it goes tacky, and then sticking that nose on. Then putting on a little bit of extra glue in any areas that need sticking down. And there we go, beak on. And now I'm just taking a brown eyeliner pencil and drawing out the shapes of my Partridge in a Pear tree. I decided to literally do a partridge and have him sort of moulding into the tree as if he was kind of part of the tree, so kind of a partridge tree hybrid. So I'm using a reference picture of a partridge and a reference picture of a tree, and I've just drawn out the partridge features here, and now I'm just starting to fill in the feather detail. So using a flat brush and some white water-based paint, I'm just using very swift sort of swiping motions with the edge of the brush, because this is a great way to create feather texture. Just be confident with it and go in quickly with the swipes, and then you will get those feathery strokes. And for some reason my camera cut out, so all you missed is that I painted the beak area and around the eyes orange in keeping with the reference pictures, and now I'm just starting to build up the sort of gnarly winding tree bark bits that are kind of all over the bird's face. So I'm doing that primarily over one side of the face and over one side of the beak, and I did have a little bit over the other side of the face, but I do take that off later because I decided that it just looked a bit daft. So I'm going for a totally asymmetrical look. So just keep building those strands up using strands of cotton wool dipped in latex and twisted, and kind of overlap the strands so you get a real nice textured bark effect. And then around the mouth, I wanted to create a kind of an angry, evil smile with the actual bark texture. So I created a kind of a smiling mouth with strips coming down to look like kind of pointed teeth. And I covered half of the mouth with that too. Once I was happy with the bark texture, I moved on to the hair, and I wanted the hair to kind of mirror the bark texture, so I'm just twisting areas and pinning them. Now this style works a lot better on hair that's dirty and has got a little bit of texture in it, and I'm also using loads of hairspray and just, like you see, twisting just random sections and pinning them to create a sort of a swirly bark tree root effect. And then I'm putting some volumizing powder in to create even more texture, and then backcombing. This look is all about kind of rough texture. And then just randomly pinning that section up so it kind of looks a bit like a kind of a bushy tree sprouting out the side of my head on the same side as I've done all the bark texture. So just keep pinning and backcombing and hairspraying until you're happy with your tree look. I'm now going in with two different shades of brown and a grey grease paint and a sponge. I'm just sponging the first layer of colour over all that bark texture. And then going in with a brush to get really into the crevices that the sponge doesn't get into. This is looking a bit grey at the moment, but this is just the base tone. So we'll be building up a few different colours. And now just going in with some flesh tone because I wanted to just create a little bit of highlight on there. Then I decided that wasn't working, so I decided to powder all over the grease paint and then try again, because otherwise it was just mixing in with colours underneath. I don't even know why I did that because I knew it would need to be powdered. Silly me. So you can see that that's just picking up the detailed areas, and we're starting to see that texture coming out. And then going in the black water-based body paint in between those gnarly tree branches and roots, just to give some definition and some depth and to show all those shapes that we created. Make sure you blend up into the hairline. Now this look does take a fair bit of time. You just need to keep building up your colours and textures and areas of highlight and shade until you're happy. Keep referring back to your reference picture of the bark and your reference picture of the partridge. Now I'm just going in with some brown eyeshadow and shading around the eyes to create a little bit of depth and definition. And using the black to create a kind of a bird-like inner eye shape. It's kind of an inner wing almost. You see what I'm doing. And then using that same black to just paint underneath the eyes in feathery strokes to look like black feathers, just to join that orange eye area in with the white feathers. And then mixing some white and black face paint to do the grey areas on the forehead and also on the throat of the bird. Like I say, I'm using a reference picture of a partridge to see where the colours are and where the feather pattern is. Adding a little bit of definition to that beak also. And then going in with some greys and just adding some more dimension to those feathers. The principle of painting the feathers is much the same as the principle of painting the bark area. You just want to build up your tones and different shades and just create dimension, depth and different colours within those feathers. Now I'm just going in with some more black and white to fill in any areas that weren't filled in and just to blend those black feathers into the white feathers. Blending those shades up into the hairline as mentioned earlier. And then I went in with some brown toned grease paint just on its own, a kind of a warm brown, and just went over the top of some of those areas of bark because I felt that they were a little bit too grey next to the grey of the partridge. So I just wanted to warm that side up a little bit, and then I'll bring those highlights back in that I've now destroyed by painting over them, and then just creating a little bit more definition with the black. You want to ensure that the bark area is quite distinct from the bird side, so do that by using different shades and tones and by using a lot of kind of black shading to give that side definition and dimension. Now if I'm sounding a little bit croaky or my voice sounds a little bit strange, it's because I've got a cough, so please excuse me. Speak of the devil. Like I said earlier, really the key to this is just to keep referring back to your reference picture so you can get as realistic a look as possible. Now I'm just going in with some black liquid liner, lining the top of the lids and kind of rounding out the corners of the eyes rather than doing a wing, so that I got a more realistic partridge look. And then just going into any areas where I want to add a little bit more depth because the liquid liner is a little bit blacker than the water-based body paint. Curling the eyelashes, adding some mascara. Painting over that beak again because I felt it had gone a little bit dull, and then using the same orange to paint my lips. I wasn't quite sure what to do with my lips, but this actually worked. Obviously birds don't have lips, but I'm a person, so I do. Right, going in with some more of that white and creating a feather texture on that grey forehead so it doesn't look too flat. And also creating some feather texture on that grey throat. Don't forget to paint your ears. Using a larger brush with some grey eyeshadow on just to sort of merge those shades together a little bit, and then using a pale sort of fleshy toned eyeshadow on again that same large brush just to create the highlights again on that bark side. Eating some Haribo, quick Haribo break. And on the chest there I just used a mix of white and grey on a sponge just to give a kind of a stippled look, and you just saw that I removed that one side of bark like I said earlier. And then it's highlight time, just to kind of bring everything to life, just going in with some white water-based paint. You might need to go in a couple of times and blend just to kind of get the brightness of highlight that you want. Doing the same on the lips and on the beak. Underneath the eyes too. This will really make everything pop and just kind of bring everything together. And then just adding extra white anywhere where I felt it had got a little bit muddy and I needed a little bit of brightness. Taking that colour up into the hair as well. Down onto the throat to add a little bit of detail because Partridge have got quite detailed throats, and then going in some black water-based paint to create the kind of the speckling that partridges have on their chest. Shading around that mouth area, and then using some grey eyeshadow just to soften out those speckles on the chest. Final bit of refining, another Haribo break, you can see me chewing there. A little bit more dimension added with some black. And we're almost done. At this stage it is just a case of fine tuning, checking your reference pictures to ensure that you're happy with your creation. And finally just adding some false eyelashes because I wanted to be a pretty partridge, and why not. Oh, and also colouring in my hands. I'm rubbing in the leftover grease paint that I had on my hands, using my hands as a palette, and then some white paint for some feathers, and then just going over the beak and some areas of bark with some PVA glue to give a little bit of shine.
Right, beauts, I hope you like my partridge very literally in a pear tree. If you did, please give this video a massive thumbs up. Please comment down below and let me know what you thought. YouTube have recently changed their algorithms, which means now that to show up in search engines, I need engagement with my video. So I would love you all forever if you would make a comment and just drop me a like. And I would probably give you a partridge in a pear tree too. Not a scary one like this, a nice one. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Love you all, and I shall see you tomorrow for the second day.